So I found a better way to stream this is if we go onto YouTube, and I can actually live stream this on YouTube a lot more efficiently than I can going through the Zoom cloud recording, because then this actually is automatically broadcasting live on YouTube. And for a lot of students on their phone, they can watch better on YouTube than they can on. So I found a better way to stream this. Go onto YouTube, and I can actually live stream this on YouTube a lot more efficiently than. Yeah. Okay. We don't need to be listening to myself live stream a second and a half behind what I'm talking about now. Okay. Anyway, so students on their phones can live stream a lot better on YouTube, especially if they have low bandwidth, because the Zoom uses a little bit more bandwidth. Anyway, so please notice what happens with this. This is a Siberian hamster. They have a little thermometer on it, and it's a sleep here. It's activity. Okay, follow this. Its activity is dormant. It's being quiet. It's not sleeping. I mean, it's sleeping. It's not being active. But then notice what happens. Its body temperature starts going up, and its body temperature starts going up prior to it actually waking up. And then, so then you see its activity. It runs around like a crazy rat, and then runs around all the day. But as it goes throughout the day, the activity gets less and less until the body temperature gets to a certain point, and then the rat goes to sleep. And if you notice that the longer it occurs to sleep, the less active it becomes. So this pattern for these little guys it happens daily. And if you watch one of those videos, you can even see the horseshoe crab, where they have a crab sitting in a cage. It goes up and down the slope, and it follows the slope of the tide, not of the actual daylight or tide where it is, but actually where it came from, which to me is really interesting. Oh, dog's back. Hi, dog. Anyway, so when you try to think about this circadian set point, your biological clock is set like before you do things. And so when you start thinking about it in terms of whether you wake or asleep, it happens prior to you actually getting awake and going to sleep. And so these hormones, that when we talk about hormonal things, that especially when we get rid of the annotation, when we start talking about hormonal things.
Timon.
Go ahead.
Timon, something else. And per?
Yeah, so the function of per and tim are dependent on activity. So all of this stuff works with the feedback systems. It's all about feedback. Okay? And so if you get the same amount of sleep every night, the feedback says, "Oh, okay, let's get 6 hours of sleep tonight. Tomorrow we need a little extra sleep. Let's all sleep a little bit sooner." But the feedback is that if you have things like, I don't know, a pandemic going on, or my wife's not feeling well, but the combination of those things changes the feedback system, because a feedback system has a lot to do with all the biological systems. It's not just one or two systems, it's the whole body. And that's the thing that we're going to start learning, especially next week when we talk about things like stupid things like your diet. I don't typically eat this early in the morning. I don't usually eat before my 9:30 class. I usually wait till after my 9:30 class to eat. But I'm a little nervous and a little stressed, so I might cook something. That's not important. And it was super tasty. I'd eat it again. That's a problem, because even though I don't need the calories, I'm more likely to eat them because my feedback systems are not functioning correctly because of stress. So the whole idea of the feedback system is that's the whole way to understand this entire hypothalamus thing. And so let me give you an example of how this feedback system works with these guys. So in a free running system, okay, a free running system, which means there's no light or dark cues. Make this into some pretty pink color. Okay, there's no light or dark cues. We start out the first day here. Okay, that's where well, these guys are nocturnal, so that's where the lights turn off and then they become active. But then, so if we leave them in what we call a constant light environment where there's no schedule, look what happens every day. The rat becomes active a little bit later every day. We call this free running because there's nothing to give the critter time. This is happening to a lot of us right now. Without having a strict schedule, without having a lot of specific things that you have to do at a specific time, we don't have a strict schedule. And as a result, there's no real time for us. There's no, Zeitgeber means time giver. And as a result, because there's no time giver, we start running free. We start running without a clock. And this actually can cause lots of problems because when you are asked to get back on a schedule, if you have drifted quite far away, it's a long time to get back on your regular schedule. It's interesting that I have been dreaming a lot lately. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Why do you think we've been dreaming more? I lost my window. Why do you think people are dreaming more?
I think because we are stressed, so our REM sleep is a little bit more than the deep sleep.
Well, so if we look up at the annotation, I'm learning. Okay, so if we look at our sleep cycles, you dream more in the second half of your night's sleep, right? And because you dream more in your second half of your night's sleep, so if I'm just going to write this over here new, oh, I did right here. Okay, we're spending more time in our second half of night's sleep. Most of us are not going to bed early. Most of us are going to bed a little bit later. And most of us are also sleeping a little bit later than they typically would. So for a while, we're going to get more REM sleep because we're spending more time in the second half of the night's sleep. The second thing is Hamza, you said that if you're stressed, stress suppresses sleep. And if you're not sleeping, you have a set point for REM. So I'm not really sure exactly how this works. There's been a couple of hypotheses and things on how it works, but there's a set point for REM. So your REM sleep has an ideal, you need a number of hours of REM sleep in order to be healthy. And if you don't get those number of hours of REM sleep, you struggle with your health. So you lose this set point. And when you start losing this set point, it pushes your REM sleep more. So easiest example is if you do get this get the sickness, if you do get a fever for a couple of days, your body spends more time in delta sleep, activating your immune system. And as a result, you cognitively can't process as much. Because you can't process as much, you can't think, you can't remember, you just can't think. So once your fever breaks, you spend a lot of time in REM sleep. And you spend a lot of time in REM sleep, it's called REM rebound. And REM rebound is where you spend the rest of more night in REM sleep than you do in deep sleep. So what's interesting is whenever you are sleep deprived, you don't make up that first half of night's sleep. You only make up the second half of night's sleep. So it's really kind of weird. So that REM sleep is the homeostatic set point, not delta or deep sleep, which to me is really interesting. And why do you think we have this REM sleep? I don't have any water here. Why do you think we have REM sleep? What's it for?
To prepare the body to wake up?
No, it's not preparing the body to wake up. Sometimes if you wake up right in the middle of a dream, you actually are not able to get up very well. If it was preparing your body to wake up, all we need is a shot of adrenaline or a shot of cold water. But that's not how it works. Well, what does it mean to wake up? What does it mean to be conscious? Come on, somebody.
To get rid of the film.
But okay, so that's bio, thanks. But what does it actually mean to be conscious? Okay, don't make me call on people, but I will. Stefano, what does it mean to be conscious? Your mic's muted. I have people clumping in on the chat.
Someone is aware.
Okay, it's awareness, alive and thinking. Okay, and I'll put this over here so I can see it. I don't know if you can see the chat window or not. Okay, so I'm sorry, Madeline, I totally forgot that your mic's not functional. My bad. Okay, so conscious is awareness, right? So REM sleep makes you more aware. So if you lose REM sleep, you start losing consciousness. In other words, you start losing your awareness of the world around you, and you start losing the ability to form connections. Now this is a little bit beyond what we do in your standard intro or physio class, but if you think about this, I'm going to write this word up here. And it's hard for me to really connect a lot of stuff because I'm worried about my wife. But at the same time is you create a story. You create a story about the world. What is a story? What does that mean?
A group of events connected.
Yeah, that's perfect. Oh, I like the word narrative. So there's a narrative of these connected events. So if you think about it, your consciousness is a narrative. It's a story. It's someone describing events that are connected. So if I pull up my Google Images, which I love to do because they're a history or a story of my, there's live stream, there's my mail. Let me put this down here. One screen is a pain in the butt, just so you know. Not having two screens is so much more efficient. Okay. So one of my students doesn't have any sort of computer or anything at home, so I found an old Chromebook, so I was gonna mail it to her. I'm like, hey, I've got some priority mail envelopes. We found this old pocket watch while cleaning out stuff. It's pretty cool. Here's the possum that crashed our stats course Monday. My son was trying to update something. There's my daughter's VIN number for her car because we paid for registration. Cruise ship on our bike ride to the beach. My new massaging tool to help me unscrew up my hip. Okay, so each one of these things, oh, this is my Google camera taking a picture of the moon and Venus. Cool. Anyway, there's the nimble beast, because she is a nimble beast. See, it's her name. So everything in my photo history, everything in my photos has a story associated with it. That story is a group of narratives. I can tell you details about why those things are there. What happens when you can't remember? What do you lose?
The story?
Yeah, you lose the story. And so consciousness or awareness is connection of things. If you can't form the connections, you can't remember. For people in my cognitive class who are doing memory right now, it is the formation of these nodes. So I'm going to put this word up here. Logic. Okay. So logic would be actual connections. is when you figure out the logic, you remember connections. So like, there's a formula that this is a good logic game. The sum of zx times zy over n equals r. Okay, so could I derivate this out? Could I take this formula and expand it out?
Yes.
Okay, so my wife's EKG came back perfect, so that's good. That means she probably just has an ulcer. Which is not good, but better than a heart attack. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good news. Okay. We'll have to detox her when she gets home from the doctors, but still. So if I know how to derivate a formula, so I have to start taking everything apart in order to derivate a formula properly. And so I could start, I remember Dr. Sandy, what was her last name? Matson. Sandra Matson. What she did is she started on one side of the whiteboard with this formula and then derivated all the way across the entire formula to come up with the other formula that is another way of calculating this little correlation coefficient thing. And what's crazy about this is that she can do it because she doesn't remember all the steps, but she remembers the connections. If you remember the connections, do you need to remember all the steps?
No.
No, because the story tells you what the next one would be. Like how to change a tire on a car. You don't need to remember all the little tiny details. All you have to do is remember what to do first, what to do second, and then doing the second thing causes the third thing to be triggered, causing the fourth thing. So we talk about this is that your conscious awareness is literally, yeah, so what Madeline just said is that it's easier to remember a story or a song than just plain information, because if you remember the connections. Now, this is what's really cool. REM sleep rehearses the connections. REM sleep doesn't remember the events, it remembers the connections. And so when you get more REM sleep, you create connections. So REM sleep is really interesting because it connects random things. I was dreaming last night that I was driving there's a truck called a Unimog, which is like, well, it's this. If I put this up here, if I put up a picture of a Dakar rally truck, one of these things. Someday when I become rich, I'm going to own one of these. You see your morons in the desert with the dune buggies. I'm going to be a moron in the desert with a Unimog. Hold on, I got to take this phone call from my wife. Back, she's fine. Okay. Echo. Who's still on? Where's the echo from? Okay, so my dog came in to say hi. Oh wait, let's see. Where's the dog? How do I see my participants? I hate this Windows. Okay. I can't see anybody's face on the cameras right now. I don't know why. Oh, there they are. Okay, where's the dog? I need to see the dog. Aw, you got one of the big long forehead dogs. Nani, come here. Nani, come here. Come here, we gotta say hi. We finally found a place for her to get a haircut. So she got a haircut. Hello. Look, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Dogs don't understand video.
Yeah.
All right. Now she's gonna find my plate with my burrito leftovers on it. Okay. So I often get distracted by pets. Okay, so make this go away again. So why would I be dreaming about driving a stupid truck like this? Why on earth would that show up in my dream? There's so many other things to worry about, but I was driving a big truck like this. And it was actually really great because I was super happy that I was driving a big truck like this in my dream. It was orange though. So if I find an orange one. But most things that I dream about are orange because I really like the color orange. It was actually very similar to that actually, a Kamaz racing. That's a Tatra, but a Kamaz racing truck. Never mind, you guys don't care. Okay, so it's not something I subconsciously want. It's something I actually consciously want.
Yeah.
And so when it's something that I eventually, if I become rich, I will get one and go out to Glamis and just destroy Glamis with my giant truck. Let people have their dune buggies all they want, motorcycles, but I will race my truck. So I don't know why, it's just a stupid thing. But because I've had that thought enough times, those connections are there. When you start dreaming, you start hallucinating. And any of the stimuli in those hallucinations can trigger the connection. And you start forming the connections between these random stimuli that creates a narrative. And then you can tell the dream to someone else later. What's really great is when you try to explain your dreams to somebody, they don't make any sense. And when they don't make any sense, it seems like it would make logical. It's interesting. But then when you try to explain it to someone, it's stupid because the connections aren't really there. You're actually exercising the connections part of your brain. Why is this so important for us as humans?
You mean to make connections?
Yeah, why is it so important?
Because we have the past, current, and the future, so we have to make connections and we have relations with others.
But why is that important for us? Do you think dogs do that in their dreams? They do dream.
Is it important because if we make connections, we don't have to remember everything, so it's less work on your brain if you can just make connections?
Excellent application of a cognitive class. Yeah, because if you just remember the connections, that's less information that you actually have to remember. If you remember the general heuristic or rule to solve a problem, you don't have to worry about all the details. The details come from the connections, not from the semantic details themselves. And in your cognitive world, you should start thinking of top down. But also, humans are not, we don't smell very good. We can't smell as good as a dog. We can't see as good as a cat. We can't, or as a mountain lion. We can't hear as good as most animals. Where in fact, our sensory umwelt is actually pretty small. The only thing that we have that's actually pretty good is our vision, but that's only good for about half the day. As soon as you get in the evening or in the morning, our vision doesn't work very well. It only works during midday when it's super bright out. So we don't have a good umwelt of sensations, but what we do have is a good connections of cause and effect. And these connections of cause and effect actually are really important because that's what allow us to survive and do well in the world, um, without having to have the giant muscles like a gorilla does, or the super speed or strength that a giant cat does, or the vision that a cat does. We can survive in the world being relatively pathetic by understanding cause and effect and thinking about things before they happen. We can create a story. And what Hamza said is right, is we have a past, a present, and here's the key, the future. We have this future self. And this future self actually comes from REM sleep. And that if you take away REM sleep, I haven't looked at that link about the Wikipedia guy, but a lot of times they do go psychotic because they can't think of anything past the future, or their future becomes extremely disoriented and extremely weird. We had a student a couple of years ago have a psychosis during class where they started seeing this magical bird that was flying around and was beautiful and filling her with light and warmth, and it was just the most magical thing she's ever experienced. And everybody around's going, what? Because what happened was the future that she was predicting about the events doesn't match what the reality of the situation was. And we call that an acute psychosis. It was caused by lots of stress, no drug use. But the idea is that the present moment exists because of a predicted future. And that's why, like right now in the world, um, it's hard to know what a predicted future is because we don't know. It's just there's a lot of uncertainty. And because there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people are feeling stressed because the future is a big question mark. I mean, they just gave us they're going to cut the college budget by between 5 and 20%, depending on what happens with the virus over the summer. And so the last time they did that, it actually was really good for students because we ended up, all the classes were very full. And the more students that enrolled, the more teachers we got to keep to hire. And so it was actually pretty good because more and more students started coming to school when the economy was a tank. Um, so, but at the same time, as the college cuts the budget for how much money that we can have. So the future is a very puzzly thing. So, um, but what's interesting is that how do you make sure that you get a good night's sleep? How do you make sure that you actually dream?
Talk to yourself a lot.
Say that, I couldn't understand what you said. I'm sorry.
Talk to yourself a lot when you are awake, then you repeat everything when you are sleeping.
No. Read. Reading. What the heck does reading have to do with REM sleep? What are you doing when you're reading?
Imagine what you are reading.
Okay, so that would be a part of it. Madeline's right. You're forming connections as you read. The words in the book have no particular meaning. If you just read each word independently, it has no purpose and meaning. But what creates the purpose and meaning is the structure of language. It's the structure of taking before, middle, end and putting them together to form the connections to form the sentence. So while you're reading, you're trying to connect things together. For all of my online assignments that I do is I'm trying to make you connect information together. That, to me, that's what a good online assignment is where you have to connect things together that you wouldn't think to connect together. And the game, there's a game, an old TV show called Connections, where you have to dig down into the meaning of things to connect two words. For example, basically after what we did today, we can easily do this if you want to. If I share the whiteboard here, whiteboard, okay. And so let me hit clear all drawings. Okay, I'm going to put two words up here, okay? One of them would be prefrontal cortex, and the other part would be dreams. Can you connect those two together? Anybody want to try? Don't just draw a line between them, because I know someone's going to do that. Can you actually find some language to connect these together? Okay, so I'm going to try this. Okay. I'm going to put people into breakout rooms. Okay, I'm just curious to see if this will work. Okay, I'm just going to make 3 rooms. Can you still see the whiteboard when I do it with a breakout room? Okay, so here we go. You have to join the breakout room. Oh, look, Angela and Christine got in there. Okay, move, go. Keep going. Come on, Forrest. Landon. There you go. All right. All right. Oh, you left the breakout room already. Okay, hold on. Let me go to my breakout rooms. Close all rooms. I haven't figured out the viability of the breakout rooms yet. I've been trying to get them to work. So you guys can't see a whiteboard when I do the breakout rooms, right?
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah. I don't know if that worked or not. Nope. That didn't work. Okay. Especially without a mic, it gets a little clunky. It worked pretty well in stats, but it didn't work very well in this class so far. That's okay. So let me go back to my share the whiteboard again here. Okay. So you should be able to write on the whiteboard. Is my whiteboard? Oh, my windows are all clustered together and I can't move it. Okay, here, clear. There we go. Oh wait, my whiteboard, it got cleared. All right, I'm gonna have to learn more stuff. Okay. So what is the connection of the prefrontal cortex and dreams?
Does dreaming happen in the prefrontal cortex?
No. So the way to form the connection, and that's I say no, like not like you're wrong, but just no, like you would think it would, but it doesn't. Okay, so can you see my screen or not? Oh, okay, now you can see my screen. Okay, so the connection. So in order to figure out where the connections are, you have to expand the semantic details so that you can actually figure out where the connection is. So what generates a dream? We talked about this last time. Come on. Your pons, lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus, occipital lobe. Okay, these are the things that generate a dream. So the occipital lobe feeds to the prefrontal cortex. Sensory integration, working memory, and Madeline just said it, choices. Okay. Madeline, we need to get you one of these text box for regular classes because you're so active on this, but you just don't have a voice in a regular class like you typically do on this. So I think you just need to be able to text your responses onto the whiteboard and when we ever get back to a real campus class again. Okay. So the idea is working memory, and it helps you decide where your choices are. Choices are based on plans. I love it. Okay. So Your choices are based on how you plan things. So the occipital lobe feeds into the sensory integration, and your working memory is what allows you to make choices. So the connection of the prefrontal cortex to your dream is the sensory integration with making plans. A plan is a story. What are the key elements that make a dream a dream? A story. So I know a few of you are in my cognitive class. And the funny thing is, every time I go back and read the textbook for that class, and every time I go back and the students do a presentation or something, I understand so much more about psychology than I have in the past. And the main reason is because I'm learning a whole bunch of new context in order to explain my story. And a lot of the stuff that I've always kind of thought and worked on works. And it works because, well, I've been doing this for a long time. But then I learn more vocabulary of why it works. And it still works. And so it reinforces the stories that I have. And so it's great because for me, it's really building a better story of understanding how psychology works. By the more different classes that I teach, I start to really understand the main concepts of what psychology is. And there's nothing really been new in psychology because we keep showing the same thing. It's the same stuff. There was a Euripides, I can't remember. It's the old Greek dude who came up with a lot of the basic principles that we study in psychology now, and he was right. He just didn't know he was right because we didn't have a way to test it. But now we can test a lot of the stuff that he did, and he was right. And it's kind of crazy that we haven't changed as humans very much in the last 10,000 years or so. And a lot of the old theories that they came up with in year zero were about the same as they do now. Weird. Same problems society was having then, we have them now. Same problems with people and leaders that they have then, we have them now. And it's cool because once you understand the story, you can start connecting things together. And so why the randomness of dreams then? Why are dreams so bizarre? Why do you think dreams are so bizarre? Well, I think so. The many thousands of connections kind of form an incoherent mass, but there is no consciousness to guide the dream. Consciousness is behind the dream, not in front of the dream. So the occipital lobe has almost an infinite amount of noise that it can generate. And because there's no consciousness guiding it, consciousness is behind it, trying to make a story out of it. And the more bizarre and weird and interesting the dream, the more random the connections that are formed. And that's what's actually kind of fascinating about them. And so this is why some people enjoy hallucinogens. Some people like to use drugs that alter their consciousness. I'm not a fan of that sort of thing. I like reality. But at the same time is that some people really like that because it gives them a better understanding of the nature of reality around them. Because of being altered, they can then understand what reality is. Nani's out here. So her job is basically to come and sit and chill with me when she usually doesn't like to come hang out in the garage, but she's hanging out in the garage for some reason today, which is good. But we ended up getting her haircut yesterday because our haircut that we gave her was awful. We found a place that was open, so now she looks like a little old lady as opposed to her fluffiness that she typically does, but that's okay. Anyway, yeah, I guys have any questions that you want to ask? It's kind of very fuzzy stuff, but that we can't be super sciencey all the time. My dog's gonna lick her foot. That's Nothing? I'm still wearing jammy pants. I did take a shower. All right. Well, unless you guys have any questions, that's all we have for today. Next week, we're going to be doing a little bit more heavy sciencey stuff. So the internal regulation, if you want to try that before we go through class, the next one, definitely try that. Otherwise, because there's just a lot of details that help with the sleep is a lot easier to understand because the feedback loops are really small. There's stress and there's per and tim. That's about it. How much sleep you've had, how much sleep you've taken, what stress or taken, how much sleep you haven't had. Okay, how much tim do you leave on the table every night? But then the next part, when we start talking about food and diet, the feedback circuits get way more complicated. Body temperature, your feedback circuits are relatively complicated. All right.
Do you want us to respond to other people's discussion posts?
Yeah, if you want to, I would suggest it because then it's kind of stupid to just post and then not read anything else anybody posts. It's like if you're just posting to get my feedback, great. But it's when you start reading other people's posts, make comments like, hey, that's an interesting point, or I don't know if I agree with that. Have you thought of this? Don't be an asshole, but at the same time, it's like, that's stupid. You're an idiot. No, but you want to make sure that you try to read what other people write so that you can start to see more connections between the material than you possibly thought. Look at the number of people that are having trouble sleeping. Look at the number of people that are sleeping more than they typically would. My son is sleeping way more than he typically would. He's not, I don't think he's even up. Yeah, yesterday he got up at 11 o'clock. He was laying in bed till 11 o'clock. And I think he's going through a little bit of a depression right now because he's not able to hang and goof off with his friends. And so we're forcing him to go outside and exercise and be active. And that's really helping his little mood swings that he has right now. But I am going to go and try and get the herd up and talk to my wife because she just got home. And have a great weekend. And be careful.
You too.
Okay?
You too.
Bye.
Bye.